Is a URC and Premiership merger back on the table? It's a rumour that has come back once again, a story that won't go away. What is the truth of the rumour? What is the potential success of a merger? What would that look like as a competition? What are the positives and negatives? Will it happen? Do you want it to happen? I'm going to cover all of that on this video. If you get value from the channel, I'm Tim and this is Egg Chasers, and I would love it if I would earn your subscription. Help me spread the word by dropping a thumbs up on the video, and most importantly, tell me your comment down below, because there was quite a reaction just a few weeks ago when this story first surfaced, but it's come back again. It says, quote, a potential merger between the URC and English Premiership split into two divisions with promotion and relegation is reportedly under serious consideration as both competitions explore ways to boost future broadcasting deals. So this is about cash, which rugby is not flush with right now. And as I say, it's a story that won't go away. It was only a month ago, just under a month ago, in fact, when this first story, the story first popped up. And this was when English clubs were considering a merger with the URC to form a British and Irish league, which ruffled quite a few feathers because it sounded, and I'm an Englishman, and I remember at the time saying, hold on, this doesn't help our reputation as having a level of arrogance here, because just saying, oh, I think we've decided that we'll kick out South African Italian teams and we'll join you, didn't go down well. It met with a swift response and a big fat no, and jog on, go and sort out your own problems was basically the response. However, it seems to have come back. This time, it appears like there are at least constructive exploratory conversations between the URC as well as the Premiership on this one. I will just say, before I go any further, this is the Wales Online that appears to be the root of this story. And if there's one thing I've learned about the Wales Online, take everything with a pinch of salt. So this could be rubbish. And I would point out that probably of any country, the one that would benefit most and would have the most reason to push for a merger with English clubs being involved with the URC would be Welsh teams, because they've been poorly managed by the WRU, dragged through the mud, run almost into the ground, not very much money, not doing particularly well. They're trying really hard, and this is no slight on the players, coaches, fans, or anything. Just they're in bad shape, and trying to resurrect some of those historic rivalries with clubs like Bath and Bristol and Gloucester, that would help Welsh regions. So maybe there's a bit of an agenda going on there. I don't know, but let's explore the potential of this. What do you think? Again, in the comments down below. Just to have a look at the two competitions, the Premiership is absolutely fantastic. I love it. I cover the Premiership on the channel and the URC. In fact, I did a roundup of the third weekend of matches, which is in the channel right now. If you haven't looked at those, go and check them out. The Premiership's fantastic. And the strength of the Premiership right now is its competitiveness. One team at the bottom, Newcastle, who are not very good. Other than that, you've got 9 teams who on any given day can beat any other team. And that makes for a brilliant competition, with every single match being massively important. Even more so now there's only 10 teams, and so there's only 18 matches. We're already 1/6 of the way through the league season. The negatives of the Premiership is there's not enough games to sustain the stadiums and all the staff and everything. Only 9 home games in a regular Premiership season is not enough. The TV deal has gone down. Clubs are in bad shape financially. The salary cap, which is one of the reasons why it's a really good, successful, competitive league, is also the reason why clubs cannot compete in the way that they used to in the Champions Cup. So those are the negatives. Same with the URC. Fantastic competition. 3 countries providing 3 winners in the first 3 years speaks to the competitive nature of the URC as well, especially at the top end. The teams at the top are absolutely brilliant and some of the best in the world. When you think the South African teams have massively increased the quality of the URC, and steel sharpens steel, they have made clubs like Glasgow, the champions, a better team as a result. And that will have a knock-on effect for Scotland and for Ireland and for Wales and Italy. Some very, very good teams. More than 70,000, maybe 80,000 fans are going to be at Croke Park this weekend for Leinster v Munster. So that's what the URC can deliver. Negatives, there are some very, very poor teams. And sometimes, and there are games this weekend which will be a total mismatch. And you might see a 40, 50-point margin. And that's not as good. There's a lot of travel involved, obviously, between South Africa and Europe. And that has financial and logistical issues. The TV deal is not yet worth what they wanted it to be worth. So Those are the two competitions. In both cases, the Premiership and the URC, the two things I mentioned there, they are not making the money that they hope they would. That's not to say they can't in the future and it won't continue to grow, but it's not there yet. And unions and clubs are in poor financial states generally. There are exceptions, but generally speaking, that is the case. So that's a solution that needs to be solved. And is that what this conversation is all about? The other thing that I kind of mentioned is the Champions Cup has been harmed as a result of the URC and the Premiership. Because in the Premiership case, the salary caps mean that teams can't compete. And in the case of the URC, the introduction of the South African teams to the Champions Cup, whilst it's introduced some really good clubs, some good sides into the competition, they don't understand, and this is no fault of South African franchises or fans, they don't understand the history of this competition, and that has had a negative impact on it. Look at the Bulls in the quarter-final playing away at Northampton. I understand why they sent a second string, but that second string has harmed, that things like that does harm the competition, and the Champions Cup, as a result, is not making the money that it once did, which is a real shame. Potentially, in 2030, the Champions Cup rights are up for renewal. I don't know if at that point the Champions Cup gets knocked on the head and they turn it into something else, possibly replaced by a World Club Cup, which is apparently, there's been rumours earlier this year, that's set to launch in 2028 between the top 8 teams in Europe and the top 8 teams in, well, 6 from Super Rugby and 2 from Japan, I think it might be. Again, that sounds like another month's worth of rugby. I don't know if that is a solution. That might just be rugby trying to find more ways to make money, and I don't know. I don't know if it's a long-term solution, but we'll see. This is the sort of thing they're talking about because the Champions Cup isn't what it was. If the Champions Cup went as well, just as an aside, I've talked about this on other videos, France would be able to send their best team to New Zealand in the summer because there would be fewer weekends filled with rugby. But I'll return to that another time. Let's get back to the Premiership and the URC. So, quote, neither the URC or the Premiership has achieved the commercial success it desires, prompting talks between key figures from both competitions. It's worth pointing out both competitions as well have private equity with the same company, CVC. They bought a 27% stake in the Premiership, a 28% stake in the URC. I thought when they negotiated that deal, it was a terrible move. I think I've been vindicated correct on that, but here we are. But the fact that they align on that side is another reason why I think it could happen. The ideas so far, well, you can sort of describe them as a British model or an American model. It seem to be the two ways that this is going. So let me talk about the British model, which is merging the leagues, so the 26 teams, sorry, into 2 divisions where all teams play each other home and away. So this would be like, this is kind of how football or soccer works in England, where you have promotion and relegation. In fact, not just in England, in Scotland and all across Europe. This is how sport works, generally speaking, right across Europe. Promotion and relegation. We understand it up north. We understand this. We get this. Fans get it. And it does add a lot of drama and tension and jeopardy to the situation when those games with teams at the bottom, normally you can ignore them in say the URC and the Premiership at the minute. Oh, it's just the bottom 2 teams playing against each other near the end of the season. It doesn't matter. Now suddenly those games matter a lot. So that is one of the suggestions. I don't know how that would work because it could just end up meaning that at the moment you end up with Zebre and the Welsh teams and Newcastle in the league below, and then a few teams living in the bouncing up and down between the top division and the bottom division, and the top division just has Leinster. And how would the salary cap work in that setup? Would you have to, like the English clubs have a salary cap at the minute? Would all clubs have to work on the same salary cap, or could Leinster flex their muscle kind of? And I don't mean this in a negative way, but Leinster and Munster and, well, all Irish teams to a degree are state-owned rugby sides. They get money from basically from the government. Their wages get paid centrally. So I don't know how that would work. There's a lot of questions and a lot of alignment that would need to be done. But at least we understand that situation. Another idea that the Wales Online mentioned is an Anglo-Welsh conference within the URC. So basically you have the 10 English teams and the 4 Welsh teams in a league. And then the URC have their, well, that would make it 12 teams in their own league. I mean, I can understand why Wales would want that to happen, but it's hard. It's hard to see the URC just going, yeah, great, we're on board with that. Let's do a joint competition where the Welsh teams just do one to England. I don't see that one. So then the American model. Yeah, as I said, you can understand why Welsh teams would want that, because those rivalries with English clubs are historic. As for the American model, so I was having to think about this and going, God, how on earth would you do this? And I thought, okay, let me think about it. And I came to the conclusion that if you wanted to do a kind of American model, you'd probably have to get rid of the Italian teams. Go on, can you join the top 14 or something? Or I suppose you could have you could get a Portuguese and a Spanish team involved and expand it. But you've got the 4 South African teams, 4 Irish teams, 4 Welsh teams. I put 4 Northern teams, which is Scottish, Newcastle and Sale. 4 Western teams, I've called them, which is the West Country sides in England. And then the Southern sides, Harlequins, Leicester, Northampton, Saracens. So there you've got, what's that, 24 teams. And I was thinking, how would you work this? Okay, you play everyone in your own division, home and away. You play everyone else, home or away. So that would be 22 matches in total, 11 home games. I don't know, I guess the top 8 overall go through to the playoffs. I don't know, division. You could have divisional winners go through to the playoffs plus 2 best runners up. I don't know, wild card matches between the next best 8 play. I got to this point and I just kind of gave up. You can go right down this route and try and map out how it could potentially look. But I think the fundamental point here is, and the reason why I swerved away from this is, yeah, this is an American model. This is how they do it in America. This is well understood in America. It's got lots and lots of years of history of the NFL and basketball and baseball working a bit like this in various forms. In the UK, in Ireland, in Europe, no. And messing about with things too much. What I got to as I was trying to work this out is what popped in my head was Super Rugby. This is how they killed Super Rugby. They had an amazing competition. Do you remember how good Super 12 was? I used to get up every Saturday morning with my breakfast and watch the Bulls against the Chiefs. You'd watch, the Crusaders against the Stormers. These matchups, the Brumbies were brilliant. These matchups and these teams were iconic back then. That league was incredible, and at the time it was the highest standard of rugby around, along with the Champions Cup. And they killed it by messing around, by expanding, by trying to get too clever, and by not just sticking to what was great. And they've also done exactly the same thing with the Champions Cup. They've messed about with the format, tinkered with it loads, made it confusing. And I don't blame the South African sides for this whatsoever, because it's not their fault. But the involvement of the South African teams as well wasn't thought through. And as a result, they have just not completely ruined, but compared to what it was, they have totally spoilt and negatively impacted what was the highest calibre of rugby. Super 12 Champions Cup, that was the highest levels of rugby that we've seen at club level, and it was incredible competitions, so competitive. Every game was awesome. There's no silver bullet, and it was never perfect, and the 5 pools of 4 had its own drawbacks and stuff. But some of these games, that Leinster comeback in 2011 against Northampton Saints, just these games are ones that I remember so fondly, and it hurts that people watching rugby this year aren't going to have that same relationship with the Champions Cup that I had. So I guess that's my overwhelming point, is don't spoil what's already great. And what I think, promotion and relegation, this is a picture of Manchester Metropolitan University, a team that, in fact, in a couple of hours, just what time is it now? In a couple of hours' time, I'm going to be going, because I'm coaching a team at Manchester Metropolitan University, even at university level in England, we have promotion and relegation. We have it in all of our leagues. They've messed about with it in the Premiership in the last few years, not having promotion and relegation, and it has not worked. But stick to what's great about these competitions and plot a course through it. Don't tinker loads and mess up what is already really, really good. I could see, do you know what, honestly, I could see a situation where the Welsh teams abandon the URC and try and negotiate with England over creating some kind of Anglo-Welsh league. I could see that happening. But if I were the URC and I were all the teams in the URC, I would stick exactly where I was and plot a long-term vision. I don't know. I'm just not convinced by a merger. I just think it could become too complicated, and also I don't want to take away from what's great about English rugby, which is the rivalries between all of those clubs. Those matches between this weekend, we've got a bunch of rival games. Those matches between Bath and Gloucester and Leicester and Northampton, Saracens and Harlequins. I don't want anything to get in the way of that. And that's where the value in English rugby is. That is where the value in the URC is. And they need to stick, I think both parties need to sort out their own house and stick to it and plot a course forward. That's my thoughts. Tell me yours. I'll be getting down in there with the comments with you after the game today, which I've got to go and get to now. So thank you very much. Hit subscribe, leave a comment, and give the video a thumbs up.